After 5 years locked away in a mandatory treatment facility, I returned home only to find my wife and son had stolen everything I built and thrown me onto the street. Nobody wanted to hire a man with my past, until I walked into a shipping company desperate for a job. The moment the chairman saw me, his expression changed completely. He stopped mid-stride, his grip tightened on the folder in his hand, and without a word of explanation, he pulled me into a private room. Then he whispered, "You don't remember me, but I've never forgotten you." What happened next revealed a truth so shocking I could barely believe it. Before we go any further, I'm genuinely grateful that you're here with me today. Drop a comment and tell me where are you watching from, your city, your country. I'd love to know. The Revenge Dad community is everywhere, and every name in that comment section reminds me why these stories matter. Note: this story contains fictional elements for entertainment and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual events is coincidental, but what it carries is worth your time. The first thing I noticed was the smell of rain on concrete. Not the antiseptic sting I'd lived with for 5 years, that sharp chemical bite that clung to the back of your throat, no matter how many times you swallowed. This was real air. Cold, damp, carrying the faint sweetness of someone's morning coffee from a shop I couldn't even see yet. I stood on the sidewalk outside the facility and breathed it in until my lungs ached. February in Los Angeles doesn't look like winter anywhere else. The sky was pale blue and thin, the kind of blue that promises sunshine but delivers cold wind instead. Palm trees lined the far end of the street, their fronds rattling in the breeze like they were applauding something. I didn't feel much like being applauded. I had a canvas bag in my left hand. Inside it, 3 sets of clothes, a toothbrush, a razor, a Bible someone had left in my room 2 years ago that I'd never opened, but couldn't bring myself to throw away, and $612 in cash, every cent I'd earned through the facility's work therapy program over 5 years of folding linens, sorting mail, and mopping hallways that always needed mopping again by morning. $612. 65 years old, starting over. I told myself not to think about the math. I started walking instead. There was a coffee shop 4 blocks down, one of those places with a chalkboard menu and mismatched chairs and a line of people staring at their phones while they waited. I got in line behind a young woman in a yellow raincoat, her hair still wet from the shower. She smelled like shampoo and hurry. Nobody looked at me. Nobody moved away. I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand in a public line and just be invisible, not watched, not assessed, not a subject in someone's chart, just a man waiting for coffee. "What can I get you?" The barista, a kid maybe 22 with a sleeve of tattoos and a genuinely friendly smile, looked at me like I was any other customer. "Black coffee," I said. "Large." $4.25. I counted out the bills carefully, my fingers a little stiff in the cold. The kid didn't rush me. He just waited with that easy patience young people have when they haven't yet learned to resent every wasted second. I handed over a 5 and told him to keep the change. "Have a good one," he said and meant it. I carried my cup to a small table by the window and sat down. Outside, the street was filling up with the morning rush people, walking fast cars, honking at nothing important. A delivery truck double-parked while the driver jogged back and forth with boxes. The whole city was already in motion, already 3 steps ahead of wherever it had been 5 minutes ago. Los Angeles doesn't wait. It never waited. Not for me, not for anyone. My right hand wrapped around the paper cup, and the warmth moved up through my fingers and into my palm. I looked down at the scar that ran from my index finger to my wrist, pale and raised, nearly 2 decades old now, and I thought about the last morning I'd sat somewhere like this, ordered coffee like a regular person, and felt like the world was still mine to move through. I pushed the thought away before it could sink its teeth in. The coffee was strong and slightly bitter, and it was the best thing I'd tasted in longer than I wanted to admit. I drank it slowly, watching the street, letting the noise of the city work its way back into my bones. A little boy in a red jacket ran past the window, his mother jogging after him, laughing and calling his name. 2 men in business suits argued over a taxi. A homeless man across the street sorted through a paper bag, with the focused patience of someone doing serious work. I'd been in that bag before. Not the paper bag, but that place. The place where every small decision matters, because there's nothing underneath you if you fall. I wasn't going back there, whatever it took. I reached into the front pocket of my jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the address I'd memorized before I even left, the house in Pasadena. 30 years of my life lived inside those walls. The driveway I'd poured concrete on myself one summer weekend with a rented mixer and a bad back because I wanted to do it right. The eucalyptus tree in the front yard that had been a sapling when my son Richard was 7 years old. My chest tightened so sharply, I had to set the coffee cup down and press my hand flat against the table to steady myself. The pain moved through me like a current. Not grief exactly, not yet. Something rawer than grief. Something that hadn't had the chance to become anything organized. I folded the paper back up and put it in my pocket. A cab pulled up to the curb outside, and through the window I watched an older man climb in slowly, the driver helping him with a small suitcase. The driver closed the door gently. A small courtesy. I watched it and felt something loosen slightly in my throat. There were still decent people in this city. I needed to remember that. I finished my coffee, gathered my bag, and stood up. My knees ached from the cold. They'd been doing that for the past year. A small complaint my body had started lodging regularly after 60. I pulled my jacket tighter and walked to the door, holding it open for a woman coming in behind me. "Thank you," she said, surprised, like it wasn't something that happened often enough. "Of course," I said. Outside, I raised my hand for a cab. One pulled over almost immediately, a small Mercy. I gave the driver the Pasadena address and watched the city slide past the windows as we moved through traffic. The radio was on low, some country station playing a song I almost recognized. The driver hummed along quietly, tapping his thumb on the steering wheel. I hadn't been back to the house in 5 years. I didn't know what I expected to find there, but I took a cab anyway. The cab turned onto Oleander Drive, and my chest seized up so hard I had to grip the door handle to keep from doubling forward. The street looked exactly the same. That was the thing nobody warned you about, how ordinary everything could remain while your entire life collapsed. The same craftsman houses with their tidy front porches. The same liquid amber trees lining the curb bare. In February, their roots lifting the sidewalk in places the city had never bothered to repair. Mrs. Gallagher's house on the corner still had the wind chimes she'd hung there 20 years ago, turning slowly in the morning breeze. And there it was, number 41. The eucalyptus tree in the front yard had grown enormous, twice the height. I remembered its silver-green leaves catching the thin winter light. I'd planted that tree the summer Richard turned 7. He'd helped me dig the hole of his small hands working alongside mine in the dirt, proud of every shovelful. Now it towered over the roofline like it had always been there, like it had nothing to do with either of us anymore. "You want me to wait?" the driver asked. "No," I said. "Thank you." I paid him and stood on the sidewalk as the cab pulled away. The driveway stretched out in front of me. The concrete I'd poured myself 30 years ago, slightly cracked now, along one edge where a tree root had pushed through. I'd done that work on a Saturday in July, rented a mixer from Home Depot, and worked until my back gave out. Diane had brought me lemonade and made me stop for lunch even when I didn't want to. My throat tightened until swallowing felt like forcing something past a closed fist. I walked up to the front door and pressed the doorbell. The familiar two-tone chime sounded from inside, a sound so embedded in my memory that hearing it from the outside felt like being turned inside out. I straightened my jacket, adjusted the strap of my bag on my shoulder, kept my feet planted. The door opened. Richard stood in the doorway in a charcoal suit, his dark hair swept back, a cup of coffee in his hand, like he'd been expecting a business call rather than his father. He was 38 years old and carried himself like a man who had never once been uncertain about his right to occupy whatever room he stood in. He looked at me the way you look at a package left on your porch that you weren't expecting and aren't sure you want. "Dad?" His voice was flat and even, the way a road is flat, nothing rising, nothing falling, just surface all the way to the horizon. "Richard," I kept my voice steady, "I'd like to come inside." He didn't move from the doorway. He tilted his head slightly as if he were genuinely considering the request, which we both knew he wasn't. "That's actually something we need to talk about," he said. "Then let's talk about it inside." The property was transferred into a family trust 14 months ago. He said it the way lawyers say things, not unkindly, just without any room for argument. "Under California law, the trust controls the asset. Your name isn't on the deed anymore, Dad. Legally, this isn't your residence." The words landed in my stomach like cold stones. I'd known somewhere in the back of my mind that something like this was coming. 5 years was a long time, long enough for a man with an MBA and a cooperative wife and a cooperative lawyer to rearrange an entire life on paper. "Is there anything of mine still inside?" I asked. My voice came out quieter than I intended, rougher at the edges. "Anything at all?" Richard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. We donated most of it. Your tools, the office furniture. The rest was sold when we liquidated some assets during the conservatorship. The conservatorship, my own estate managed by my own son, because a court had looked at a folder full of documents bearing a dead man's future signature and decided I wasn't capable of deciding what to eat for breakfast. I felt my hands curl at my sides, the knuckles pressing hard against my palms. The anger was there. I could feel it moving through my chest, like something trying to find a way out. But I had learned in 5 long years that anger without leverage is just noise. And I had no leverage, not yet. I looked past Richard's shoulder into the hallway. The hardwood floors I'd refinished in 2009, the cream-colored walls Diane had chosen from a paint sample, the size of a postcard, holding it up to the light in 7 different spots before deciding. The framed watercolor of the California coast we'd bought at a street fair in Santa Barbara the year we turned 50. Diane stood at the far end of the hallway. She was wearing a pale blue cardigan, her gray hair pulled back, her arms crossed tight against her chest like she was holding herself together by main force. Her eyes were red, not freshly red, but the kind of red that comes from crying on and off for a long time. Her lower lip trembled visibly, and she pressed it flat with effort, and then it trembled again. Diane. I said her name before I could stop myself. Her chin crumpled, her hands flew up to cover her mouth, and a sound came out of her short and strangled, like something she'd been trying to keep down for a very long time. She took 1 step toward the hallway, and then Richard half turned and looked at her, and whatever he communicated with that look was enough to stop her feet. She stood there with her hands over her mouth, and her eyes spilling over, and she didn't move. My chest cracked open somewhere behind my sternum. The pain was so specific and so complete that for a moment my vision went slightly white at the edges. This was the woman I had driven to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when she thought she was having a heart attack. The woman whose cold feet I had tolerated against my shins for 31 years of marriage. The woman I had called from every business trip just to hear her voice before I slept. She was 15 feet away from me, and she might as well have been standing on the other side of a wall of glass. "You should probably get going, Dad," Richard said, turning back to me. His voice hadn't changed, cool and measured like a man reading from a prepared statement. "If you need help with temporary housing options, there are county resources." "I don't need county resources, Richard." My voice came out harder than I planned. "I built this house. I paid for every beam and every nail in it. I planted that tree in the yard with your hands in mine when you were 7 years old." Something moved across his face just for a fraction of a second, a ripple under the surface, and then it was gone, smoothed back into that unreadable corporate composure. "The legal reality is what it is," he said. "I'm sorry." He didn't sound sorry. He sounded finished. I looked at him for a long moment. This man I had coached through Little League and helped move into his first apartment and sat beside in a hospital waiting room when he was 24 and had his appendix out. I looked at him and I looked at Diane still standing at the end of the hallway with tears tracking silently down both cheeks and her hands pressed hard against her mouth. Then I looked at the eucalyptus tree one more time. "Okay," I said. I turned and walked back down the driveway. My legs felt strange beneath me, like the signals from my brain were arriving slightly delayed. At the end of the driveway, I stopped, set my bag down on the sidewalk, and pressed both hands flat against my thighs until the shaking in my fingers slowed. Behind me, the door clicked shut. I picked up my bag. I walked 3 blocks before I realized I had nowhere specific to go. So I kept walking, because stopping felt like something I couldn't afford to do yet. I found a room at the Sunrise Motel on Fletcher Avenue for $34 a night. Cash. Only no questions asked, which suited me fine because I didn't have many answers left anyway. The room smelled like old carpet and window unit AC, and the mattress had a dip in the middle that pulled you toward the center no matter how you started out. The bathroom faucet dripped every 11 seconds I counted the first night, lying on my back, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like the state of Florida. The TV got 4 channels clearly, and 2 more if you held the antenna at a precise 45-degree angle, which I eventually gave up on. It wasn't much, but it had a door that locked from the inside, and after 5 years of a door that locked from the outside, that meant more than I knew how to say. I set a budget my first morning. $34 for the room, $10 to $12 for food oatmeal from the gas station microwave, sandwiches from the deli 2 blocks over that sold day-old bread at half-price, coffee from wherever had the cheapest cup. That left me roughly enough for 3 weeks, maybe 22 days if I was careful, before I'd have to make some harder decisions. I gave myself 22 days to find work. I cut every corner I could find, skipped meals when I had to walk instead of taking the bus, stretched every dollar until it had nothing left to give. The first place I walked into was a logistics company called Pacific Freight Solutions on Alameda Street in Carson. Big operation, I could tell from the loading dock out front, 4 bays deep forklifts moving in the morning light. I'd run an operation not unlike it for 30 years. I knew exactly what they needed and exactly how to give it to them. The woman at the front desk, mid-40s, reading glasses pushed up on her head, a mug that said, "World's okayest boss," smiled when I came in and slid an application across the counter. "Warehouse associate or driver?" she asked. "Either," I said. "I have 30 years in freight logistics, inventory management, fleet coordination, vendor relations." Her eyebrows went up, impressed. "That's quite a background. Fill this out and someone will be with you shortly." I filled it out completely and honestly, including the section that asked about any gaps in employment history. I wrote, "Involuntary psychiatric hold conservatorship, 2018-2023. 5 words that told a story I wasn't ready to tell out loud and didn't have the luxury of hiding. 20 minutes later, a man in a polo shirt came out, shook my hand, and sat across from me at a small table near the water cooler. He read through my application with the focused attention of someone who was genuinely interested, right up until he reached the bottom of the second page. Then his face did a thing. Faces do not unkind, but careful the way people look when they're about to say something they've rehearsed. "Mr. Harrison," he said, setting the papers down and folding his hands on top of them. "I appreciate your honesty on the form, I do. But we run full background checks on all applicants, and our insurance carrier has very specific requirements around certain kinds of prior history. I'm not in a position to move forward with your application." My jaw tightened. I kept it off my face. "I understand," I said. "Thank you for your time." I stood up, shook his hand again, and walked out into the parking lot, where the February wind hit me full in the face. I stood there for a moment with my hands in my pockets and my eyes stinging. Not from crying, just from the cold, I told myself. And then I walked to the next address on the list I'd written in my notebook the night before. The next 8 days went roughly the same way. A security firm in Compton that looked at my application and told me they'd call, they never called. A distribution warehouse in El Monte where the HR manager, a young man who couldn't have been older than 26, read my paperwork and then looked at me with an expression of genuine discomfort, like he'd been asked to deliver bad news he hadn't been trained for. "I'm really sorry, sir," he said, and his voice cracked slightly on the last word, which told me he meant it. "If it were up to me personally." "It's all right, son," I said, and I meant that too. "You're doing your job." He looked like he might say something else. Then he pressed his lips together and nodded, and I saved us both the trouble by standing up first. A janitorial company in Linwood, a cold storage facility in Wilmington that smelled like frozen fish, and industrial cleaner, a small trucking operation in Downey where the owner, a heavy-set man with a gray beard and kind eyes, actually read my full file before he came out to talk to me and sat across from me with the application in his hands for almost a full minute before he spoke. "I'll be straight with you," he said finally. "I've got 3 guys in this office who've known each other 20 years, and the minute word gets out that I hired someone with a psychiatric record, I'm going to have a conversation I don't want to have. It's not fair. I know it's not fair. But I've got a payroll to make and I can't afford the friction right now." I nodded slowly. He hadn't said anything I hadn't already heard in 4 different configurations. But somehow, the fact that he'd admitted it wasn't fair, that he'd looked me in the eye and acknowledged the injustice of it out loud, made something in my chest loosen the smallest amount. "I appreciate you being straight," I said. "Good luck to you," he said. "I mean that sincerely." By day 15, I had $89 left and a list of 11 companies that had told me no in 11 different ways. My shoes had developed a small hole in the left sole that let in water when the sidewalk was wet, which it was most mornings in February. I'd bought a pair of thin insoles from the dollar store and folded a piece of cardboard underneath them, which helped a little. I sat on a bench near the Greyhound station downtown one afternoon and ate half a sandwich and counted what I had left and did the math 3 times, as if doing it a 3rd time might produce a different answer. It didn't. I had maybe 5 or 6 days before I'd have to start making calls I didn't want to make. Shelters, county services, the kinds of places that would look at my file and see what everyone else saw. I was sitting there with the rest of my sandwich in my hand, watching a pigeon work its way across the concrete toward a dropped French fry, when I noticed the telephone pole across the street. Someone had stapled a flyer to it, white paper, slightly crooked, the kind of thing you staple up in 5 seconds on your way to somewhere else. The wind had lifted one corner so it flapped steadily in the February breeze. I wouldn't have thought anything of it except that I could read 2 words from where I was sitting. Warehouse, hiring. I crossed the street. The flyer was handwritten in blue marker, slightly smeared in one corner from rain. Northern Route Shipping Warehouse Associate needed. Apply in person. 1847 Pierview Drive, Long Beach. No experience necessary. Pay discussed at interview. No experience necessary. I almost smiled at that. I had 30 years of experience. I had managed fleets, negotiated contracts, built a company from a single leased truck and a folding table in a rented office space. I had forgotten more about freight logistics than most people in this industry would ever learn. And I was applying for a job that said no experience necessary. I tore the bottom corner of the flyer off carefully and wrote the address in my notebook in case the paper got wet. Then I stood there on that sidewalk in the February cold, the wind off the harbor working its way through my jacket, and felt something stir in my chest that I hadn't felt in longer than I wanted to admit. Not hope exactly, not yet, but the thing that comes just before hope, the small stubborn decision to try one more time. I didn't know anything about Northern Route Shipping. I didn't know who ran it or how big it was or whether they'd look at my file and close the door like everyone else had. But Long Beach was 20 minutes on the Blue Line, and I knew warehouses and I knew freight, and right then that felt like enough to go on. I put the address in my pocket and finished my sandwich. The pigeon finally reached the French fry and stabbed at it twice before deciding it wasn't worth the effort. I knew how that felt, but I was going anyway. The Blue Line dropped me at the Long Beach Transit Center at 8:47 in the morning, and I walked the rest of the way to Pierview Drive, with my collar turned up against the wind coming off the harbor. The smell hit me before I even turned the corner, salt water and diesel, and something metallic underneath it. All the particular cocktail of a working port that I hadn't breathed in 5 years, but recognized the way you recognize a voice from another room. My body remembered it before my mind caught up. My shoulders dropped half an inch. My stride evened out. This was my world. Whatever else had been taken from me, they hadn't taken that. Northern Route Shipping occupied a long, low building set back from the street behind a chain-link fence topped with green privacy screening. Through the gaps, I could see the yard, 3 semi-trucks backed up to loading bays, a forklift moving a pallet of shrink-wrapped boxes with the unhurried efficiency of something that had done this 10,000 times. 2 men in orange vests stood near the far bay comparing clipboards, their breath visible in the February morning air. I stood at the entrance for a moment and watched the operation. Clean yard. Equipment in good condition. The trucks were less than 4 years old by the look of the cab styles. A company that reinvested in its fleet was a company that planned to be around. The signage was simple and well-maintained. Nobody was standing around doing nothing. Good signs. All of them. I pushed through the door into the front office. The reception area was small and functional. 2 chairs, a low table, with a copy of a trade publication from 3 months ago, and a desk where a young woman with her hair in a tight bun was typing something with focused intensity. She looked up when I came in, and her expression shifted into the professionally neutral look of someone who handled walk-ins regularly. "Good morning," she said. "Can I help you?" "I'm here about the warehouse associate position," I said. "I saw the flyer near downtown." She pulled open a drawer without breaking eye contact and slid a 1-page application across the desk. "Fill this out completely. Someone will be with you shortly." I sat in one of the chairs, balanced the clipboard on my knee, and filled it out. Completely and honestly, same as I'd done 11 times before. When I reached the employment gap section, I wrote the same 5 words I'd been writing for 3 weeks. Involuntary psychiatric hold, conservatorship, 2018-2023. My pen didn't hesitate. I'd stopped letting my hand hesitate over that line after the 3rd rejection. Hesitation didn't change what was written. It only made the writing harder. I handed the application back to the receptionist and returned to my chair. The office was quiet except for the sound of her keyboard and the muffled rumble of a truck engine somewhere in the yard. Through the window beside the entrance, I could see the forklift making another pass, precise and unhurried. I watched it and felt the familiar pull of a place where things moved with purpose, where every action connected to the next in a chain of cause and effect that made sense. I'd missed that more than I'd admitted to myself. The inner door opened. A man came through it, reading from a folder, his attention fully on the papers in his hand. He was somewhere in his late 50s, broad-shouldered with gray at his temples, and the kind of posture that comes from years of standing in rooms where people look to you for decisions. He wore dark slacks and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows, no tie the way men dress when they're serious about work, but not about appearances. He was moving toward the outer door with the purposeful stride of someone with somewhere to be. Then he looked up. He looked at me the way you look at something that stops making sense, a word you've read so many times, it suddenly looks spelled wrong, a face in a crowd that your brain snags on without knowing why. He stopped walking. His eyes moved from my face to my hands, and then they stayed there, fixed on my right hand resting on my knee. The folder in his grip bent slightly as his fingers tightened around it. I looked down at my own hand, then back up at him. I had no idea what he was seeing. He crossed the room in 4 strides and stopped in front of me. Up close, his eyes were dark brown and very steady, the kind of eyes that had looked at difficult things without flinching. He studied my right hand for a long moment, the scar that ran from my index finger to my wrist, pale and raised against the winter-pale skin of my hand, and something moved across his face that I couldn't name. Not recognition exactly, something deeper than that, something that looked almost like relief. "Excuse me," he said, his voice lower than I expected. "I know this is going to sound like a strange question." He paused, like he was deciding how much to say. "That scar on your right hand, how did you get it?" My eyebrows went up. In 30 years of job interviews, nobody had ever asked me that. "An accident," I said carefully. "A long time ago. Someone needed help and things got physical. I ended up on the wrong end of a chain-link fence." I paused. "Why?" He exhaled through his nose slow and controlled the way people breathe when they're managing something large. He turned to the receptionist. "Ashley," he said, "hold my 9:30 for 20 minutes, please." "Of course, Mr. Whitmore." He looked back at me. "Would you come with me, Mr.?" He glanced at the application still in Ashley's hand, and she held it up so he could read the name. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly when he read it. "Mr. Harrison, please, just for a few minutes." I picked up my bag and followed him through the inner door and down a short hallway into a corner office. He closed the door behind us. The room had a window looking out over the yard, and through it I could see the same forklift, still working, still unhurried. He gestured to a chair across from his desk, but didn't sit himself. He stood with his hands at his sides, looking at me with an expression I still couldn't fully read. "I'm Daniel Whitmore," he said. "I own this company. Walter Harrison." I said, though he already knew that. "Mr. Harrison." He stopped, pressed his lips together, started again. "I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a moment, because what I'm about to say is going to sound unusual, and I'd rather you hear it from me directly than wonder about it later." My heart rate picked up without my permission. I kept my hands loose on the arms of the chair and waited. "I've been looking for you," he said, "for a very long time." The words sat in the air between us like something physical. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice even. "I think there might be some confusion, Mr. Whitmore. I don't believe we've met." "No," he said. "We haven't. Not formally." He moved to the window and stood looking out at the yard for a moment, his back to me, and when he turned around, his expression had settled into something quieter and more deliberate. "I'm not going to explain everything right now, partly because I'm still processing the fact that you're actually sitting in that chair. But I want you to know that I'm aware that application in Ashley's hands has information on it that's caused other people to close doors on you." His eyes met mine. "I'm not going to do that." My throat tightened so sharply that for a moment I couldn't find any words at all. I pressed my feet flat against the floor to keep from showing what was happening in my chest. "Whatever position you applied for," Daniel Whitmore said, "you're hired, Mr. Harrison. I'll handle your paperwork personally. You won't need to go back through standard HR processing." He said it plainly, the way CEOs say things when they have made up their minds and the decision is already done. "I'd like you to start Monday if that works." I looked at this man, this stranger who had stopped in the middle of his morning and led me into his office and told me I had a job without asking me to explain or justify or minimize a single word of what was written on that application. My eyes burned. I blinked twice hard and pressed my back teeth together until the burning passed. "Monday works," I said. My voice came out steady. I was proud of that. Daniel Whitmore nodded and reached across the desk to shake my hand, my right hand, the scarred one. His grip was firm, and he held it a beat longer than a standard handshake, his eyes on mine, and I had the distinct and disorienting feeling that this moment meant something to him that I didn't yet have the information to understand. He leaned close, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. "You don't remember me, Walter," he said, "but I've never forgotten you." Then he straightened, and I walked back out through the hallway with a feeling I didn't yet have words for. I didn't know what that meant, but that night, for the first time in 3 weeks, I didn't lie awake counting what I had left. I just slept. The orange vest was heavier than it looked. Not physically, it was standard issue, safety gear, polyester mesh with reflective strips, the kind you find in every warehouse from Long Beach to Louisville. But when Brigham pressed it into my hands Monday morning at 6:55, something about the weight of it in my palms made my throat tighten in a way I hadn't expected. It was proof. Tangible, wearable proof that I was somewhere I was supposed to be, doing something I was permitted to do with my name on a badge clipped to the front pocket. Walter Harrison, warehouse associate, Northern Route Shipping. I put it on over my jacket and straightened the front panel and told myself to get moving. Brigham Hayes was a large man, 6'2", at least broad across the shoulders, with hands that looked like they'd been built for a different, harder century. He was somewhere around 50, with a shaved head and a close-cropped gray beard, and the unhurried confidence of someone who had been running warehouse floors long enough to know that panic never actually helped anything move faster. He handed me a pair of worn leather work gloves and a badge lanyard with the same efficiency as a man who had done this orientation 100 times and had long since stopped feeling the need to make it ceremonial. "You worked freight before?" he asked, leading me through the inner door and into the main warehouse floor. 30 years, I said. He glanced sideways at me with an expression that recalibrated slightly, not surprise exactly, but a quiet adjustment, the way experienced people look when they realize they're dealing with someone who actually knows things. "Then you already know most of what I'm going to tell you," he said. "I'll tell you anyway, because it's my job. After that, you're on your own." The warehouse opened up around us as we walked a long, high-ceilinged space that smelled like cardboard and forklift exhaust, and the faint salt undertone that seeped in from the harbor 2 blocks away. Shelving units ran in long parallel rows from one end to the other, stacked with pallets of shrink-wrapped inventory. At the far end, 3 loading bays stood open to the gray morning sky, and I could hear the low rumble of a truck engine idling somewhere outside. Overhead, fluorescent lights hummed steadily, casting everything in that particular flat, honest light that warehouses have, the kind that doesn't hide anything. I felt something settle in my chest, like a key turning in a lock. Brigham walked me through the layout. Receiving bays on the east wall, outbound. Staging on the west, the inventory control station in the northwest corner, where incoming shipments were checked against purchase orders and logged into the system. He showed me the forklift charging station, the safety board with its incident log, the break room in the back with its row of lockers and its battered coffee machine that he referred to without irony as old reliable. "2 rules on my floor," he said when the tour was done. "You work safe and you work honest. Everything else we can figure out." He paused, then added more quietly, "One more thing. Stay out of Kevin's way and you'll be fine." "Kevin," I said. Brooks, warehouse manager. Brigham stopped. Chose his words carefully, the way people do when they're describing something they've made peace with but don't entirely approve of. "He runs the floor his way. Just keep your head down your first few weeks, do your work, and don't give him anything to grab onto." I filed that away without asking the follow-up questions that were already forming in the back of my mind. There would be time for those later. Brigham assigned me to the inventory control station for the morning, checking incoming shipments against purchase orders, reconciling counts, flagging discrepancies for the system log. It was the kind of work that would have bored most of the men on that floor into a stupor. For me, it was like being handed a familiar instrument after years of silence. My hands moved through the process with a muscle memory I hadn't known was still intact, comparing packing slips to purchase orders, counting units against manifests, noting lot numbers and SKUs with the automatic precision of someone who had done this 10,000 times before the world fell apart. I used the paper system. There was a digital terminal at the station, a touchscreen interface that logged inventory directly into the warehouse management software. But I pulled a small notebook from my jacket pocket, the same kind I'd been buying from dollar stores for 30 years, and ran my counts on paper first before entering anything into the machine. Old habit. Paper doesn't crash. Paper doesn't get overwritten by someone else's entry. Paper stays exactly where you put it, saying exactly what you wrote. Nobody questioned it. To them, I was just a thorough old man who liked paper. That was fine with me. The morning passed in the rhythm of numbers and movement, the steady percussion of a working warehouse forklifts, humming past pallet jacks rattling over the concrete seams, men calling back and forth across the rows in the shorthand of people who've worked together long enough to communicate in half sentences. I kept my head down and did my work and listened to everything. At lunch, I sat at the end of the break room table with a sandwich I'd made that morning in the motel room, turkey on wheat mustard, a slice of cheese, and a cup of coffee from Old Reliable, which turned out to deserve its name. Two younger men across the table were arguing cheerfully about a basketball game with the passionate specificity of people who have strong opinions about things that don't matter much, which is one of the great pleasures of ordinary life. I ate my sandwich and listened and didn't offer an opinion, and nobody asked for one. And it was comfortable in the way that ordinary things are comfortable when you've been away from ordinary for a long time. A man named Terry dropped into the seat beside me and nodded a greeting. Mid-30s, wide face, easy manner. "You're the new guy," he said. It wasn't a question. "Walter," I said and offered my hand. "Terry Macklin." He shook it. "You doing inventory control this morning, yes?" "Good station," he said. "Quiet. Kevin leaves you alone over there mostly." He unwrapped a breakfast burrito that smelled like eggs and green chili and took a large, satisfied bite. "Where'd you work before this?" "Various places," I said. "Long time in freight." He nodded, accepting this without pushing the way working people often do, understanding instinctively that a man who says various places has his reasons and they're his own. It was in the afternoon during my second round of incoming inventory checks that I found it. A pallet of consumer electronics had come in on the 11 o'clock truck, 48 units of a mid-range laptop model, shrink-wrapped in groups of 4, stacked 6 layers high. The purchase order on file listed 48 units received. The packing slip from the shipper listed 48 units. But when I counted the physical units on the pallet, slowly twice running my finger along each layer, I came up with 45, 3 units short. I stood in front of that pallet for a long moment, my pen hovering over my notebook. 3 units on a 48-piece shipment was a 6.25% discrepancy. In freight, that's not nothing. That's either a shipper error, a transit loss, or something else, and in my experience, something else was usually the most accurate category. I logged 45 units into the system, flagged the discrepancy as per standard procedure, and wrote the details in my notebook. Date, time, pallet, ID number, purchase order number, units listed versus units received. Then I wrote one more line smaller than the rest. In the margin check, previous receiving logs. See if pattern. I tore nothing. I said nothing to anyone. I closed my notebook, put it back in my jacket pocket, and went back to work. 3 units off on a 48-piece pallet could be a counting error, could be a shipper mistake, could be transit damage that hadn't been documented. I'd seen all of those explanations turn out to be true. I'd also seen all of them turn out to be something else entirely. I wrote it down anyway. Old habit. The kind of habit that in 30 years of freight had saved me from being wrong in ways that mattered. By 5 o'clock, when Brigham came around to end the shift, my feet ached and my lower back had registered its familiar complaint about standing on concrete for 8 hours. I pulled off the orange vest, folded it carefully, and hung it in my locker beside my name badge. I stood there for a moment with my hand on the locker door, looking at my name printed on that small plastic card. Walter Harrison, warehouse associate. It was a Tuesday afternoon in my second week when I found it. Brigham had asked me to clear out the old inventory control station in the northwest corner, the one nobody had been using since the previous associate left. There was a newer terminal set up closer to the receiving bays, and the old station had become a catch-all for outdated binders, broken label printers, and 7 months of accumulated clutter that nobody had gotten around to dealing with. I didn't mind the work. Sorting through a neglected workspace is its own kind of archaeology. You learn things about the people who came before you, about the systems they used and the shortcuts they took, and the small ways they tried to make an imperfect situation manageable. I'd cleaned out enough desks in 30 years to know that a workspace tells the truth about a person in ways that a resume never does. I'd worked through 2 binders of outdated vendor contacts and a drawer full of dried-up pens when I got to the bottom drawer on the left side. It was stuck. Not locked, just swollen in its track from humidity the way old wood does near the harbor. I worked it back and forth twice, then gave it a sharp pull, and it came free all at once and nearly took me with it. Inside was a single item. A notebook. Slim battered, the blue cover warped at one corner from moisture. A strip of masking tape had been pressed diagonally across the front at some point, and on it, written in careful block letters with a black marker, James Kowalski, Inventory Specialist. I picked it up. The cover crinkled slightly under my fingers, soft with age. I opened it. The first pages were orderly and professional, the kind of notes a thorough employee keeps when they're learning a new system. Receiving schedules, vendor contact numbers, A hand-drawn map of the warehouse floor with dimensions and bay numbers labeled in precise small handwriting. James Kowalski had been meticulous. He'd been good at his job. I turned the pages slowly. Somewhere around the middle of the notebook, the character of the writing changed. The entries became shorter, less organized. The handwriting, still precise at first, gradually tightened and compressed, the letters pressing closer together like they were trying to take up less space on the page, as if the man writing them had started to feel that he himself was taking up too much space in the world. The content changed too. March 14th, third Tuesday of the month. Gray truck, no logo, backed into Bay 4 at 1:15 a.m. Two men I don't recognize doing the loading. Kevin present the entire time. Counted at least 12 units of the Meridian display panels. Same model that came in short on the February manifest. My stomach dropped. I kept reading. March 28th. Tried to reconcile the February numbers again. 41 units logged as received. Physical count last week showed 38. Kevin saw me counting and told me to log what the system shows, not what I think I see. His exact words: "The system is what matters. Your eyes make mistakes." My right hand tightened around the notebook until the cover bent slightly. I made myself loosen my grip. April 9th. Brigham knows something is wrong. I can see it in the way he doesn't look at Kevin anymore. But he's got 3 kids and a mortgage in Lakewood, and I don't think he's going to say anything. I don't blame him. The entries continued for another dozen pages. Dates, times, partial license plate numbers, descriptions of merchandise he'd seen loaded onto that gray truck in the middle of the night. The handwriting grew more compressed with each entry, each page, each week. A man trying to document what he was seeing while simultaneously becoming more afraid of what documenting it might cost him. The second to last page had only 2 lines. I told HR there were discrepancies. They said they'd look into it. That was 2 weeks ago. And then the last page, 4 words. Written hard enough that the pen had almost torn through the paper, the letters ragged and uneven. Nothing like the careful block printing of the first pages Kevin knows. I'm scared. Then nothing. The rest of the notebook was blank. I sat down on the edge of the old desk because my legs had decided, without consulting me, that standing was no longer the best option. The notebook lay open in my lap, those 4 words staring up at me in the flat fluorescent light of the warehouse. James Kowalski had sat at this same desk. He had opened this same bottom drawer probably 100 times. He had seen exactly what I was beginning to see, and then one day he had simply been gone, terminated for theft, according to what Terry had mentioned in passing last week. The way people mention things that happened before their time without judgment, without much interest, because the story was already over before they arrived. Except the story wasn't over. It had just been waiting in a stuck drawer for someone to pull it open. My heart was hammering now, loud enough that I was aware of it, and my hands were not entirely steady as I carefully closed the notebook. I held it for a moment, this small, battered record of a frightened man trying to do the right thing, and felt the weight of it in a way that had nothing to do with its actual mass. James had kept his notebook at the station. He had trusted the desk. I was not going to make the same mistake. I slid James Kowalski's notebook into the inside pocket of my jacket right against my chest next to my own. 2 notebooks, same desk. Same discoveries, same gray truck in the same dark hours. I was not going to end up a story someone mentioned in passing. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and went back to work. But the warehouse looked different to me. Now the long rows of shelving, the loading bays at the far end, the shadows between the stacks where the fluorescent lights didn't quite reach. The same space it had been an hour ago, just with the lights turned on in a different way. Whatever happened to James Kowalski, I thought picking up my pen and opening my own notebook to a fresh page is not going to happen to me. I met Kevin Brooks on a Wednesday morning, and I understood immediately why James Kowalski had been afraid. He came through the warehouse floor at 9:15, moving the way certain men move when they've decided. A space belongs to them. Not fast, not aggressive, just utterly unhurried, with the bone-deep ease of someone who has never once considered that he might not be the most important person in any room he enters. He was somewhere around 40, lean and well-dressed for a warehouse manager. Dark jeans, a button-down shirt with the kind of subtle sheen that comes from expensive fabric, and on his left wrist, catching the fluorescent light, as he walked a watch that I recognized immediately. Rolex Submariner. Retail price somewhere north of $10,000. A warehouse manager making $42,000 a year does not wear a Rolex Submariner. I'd been in business long enough to know that the distance between what a man earns and what a man owns is one of the most reliable indicators of where his money is actually coming from. He stopped in front of my station like he'd intended to all along, even though I was fairly certain he hadn't noticed me until that moment. He looked me over the way you look at a piece of furniture someone has moved without asking you first, not quite hostile but proprietary. Like the question wasn't whether he approved of me, but whether I understood that his approval was required. "You're the new guy," he said, not a question. "Walter Harrison?" I said. I didn't offer my hand. How old are you, Walter?" 65. He made a small sound that wasn't quite a laugh. 65. He let the number sit there like it meant something unflattering. "Lot of wear on those joints. You sure you can keep up with the pace here?" "I kept up yesterday," I said, "and the day before." Something moved behind his eyes, not respect, not quite. More like a recalibration. He'd expected me to apologize for my age, or defer, or make some self-deprecating joke. When I didn't, he shifted his weight slightly, a small adjustment that told me more about him than anything he'd said. "I run a tight operation," he said. "My floor, my rules. You got a problem with the way something's done. You come to me. You don't go sideways to management. You don't go sideways to HR. You come to me first." "Clear, clear," I said. He held my gaze for a beat longer than necessary, the kind of look designed to establish something to plant a flag. And then he moved on down the row without another word, his shoes making a clean, deliberate sound on the concrete floor. I watched him go and felt the cold, specific weight of recognition settle in my stomach. I'd known men like Kevin Brooks my entire working life. Men who built their authority on the premise that everyone around them was either useful or afraid, and that the two categories were largely interchangeable. He spent the rest of the morning making sure I fell into the second one. By 10 o'clock, I'd been reassigned from inventory control to the receiving bay, where a truck had backed in with a full load of industrial kitchen equipment, commercial refrigerators, double-door freezers, restaurant-grade ranges, each unit weighing between 300 and 400 pounds. There were 8 of them. Brigham had a team of 4 men with an equipment dolly and a pallet jack to handle the unload. Kevin pulled 2 of those men for another job 10 minutes after the truck arrived. "Harrison," he called across the bay, "you're on unload. Figure it out." Brigham's jaw tightened. He looked at Kevin, then at me, then at the truck. He was the kind of man who did the math on a situation quickly and accurately, and the math here was not good. But Kevin was already walking away, his phone to his ear, talking to someone about something that apparently required his full attention. "I'll take the dolly," I told Brigham. "You and Terry work the pallet jack. We go slow and we go careful." Brigham looked at me for a moment. "You've unloaded equipment like this before." "Many times," I said. "Let's get started." It took us 2 hours and 40 minutes. My lower back announced its displeasure loudly by the halfway point, a deep grinding protest that radiated from my lumbar region down into my left leg with every lift. I breathed through it and kept working. My hands ached from gripping the dolly handles in the cold air of the bay. By the time the last unit was on the floor and Brigham was securing it with load straps, I was sweating through my jacket despite the February cold, and my legs were shaking with the fine, persistent tremor of muscles pushed past what they'd been asked to do in a long time. "Good work," Brigham said quietly, handing me a bottle of water. He said it the way men say things they mean without making a production of it. "Thank you," I said. I drank half the bottle without stopping. Kevin walked by 20 minutes later, glanced at the unloaded equipment, and said nothing. His expression suggested he'd been hoping for a different outcome. That evening I stayed after the end of my shift. I told Brigham I wanted to put in some overtime. I needed the money, which was true. He nodded and signed off on it without asking further questions, which I appreciated. I found a quiet corner near the inventory control station, pulled out my notebook, and spent an hour cross-referencing the receiving logs from the past 3 months against the physical inventory counts I'd been quietly running on paper during my regular shift hours. The pattern was there. It wasn't subtle once you knew to look for it. Every 3 to 4 weeks, across 6 different product categories: consumer electronics, medical devices, high-end kitchen equipment, commercial audio, gear. The logged received quantities matched the purchase orders exactly, but the subsequent physical inventory counts, run 2 to 3 days later, came up short by anywhere from 3 to 8%. Not enough to trigger an automatic audit flag in the warehouse management system. Just enough multiplied across enough product categories and enough months to represent a significant and sustained loss. I added 3 pages of notes to my own notebook and put it back in my inside pocket. At 1:15 in the morning, I was still there. I dimmed my work light and moved to a position between 2 tall shelving units near the north wall, close enough to the rear loading bay to see clearly, far enough back to be invisible to anyone who didn't know to look. I'd done this kind of patient, still waiting only a few times in my life. And each time I'd told myself it was the last time, and each time the situation had required it anyway. The bay door rolled up, slowly, the mechanical grind of it muffled. Someone had disengaged the standard motor and was operating it manually, which was why it made a fraction of the noise it should have. A vehicle backed in without headlights. Gray. A box truck, mid-size, no company logo, the rear plates obscured by what looked like a deliberately placed strip of mud across the lower third. Kevin came through the side door in dark clothes, no watch, moving with a focused, efficient energy that was entirely different from his daytime swagger. He had his phone in his hand and he was typing something as he walked, communicating with someone outside, coordinating timing. 2 men I had never seen before climbed down from the truck. They worked without speaking, without hesitation, with the practiced speed of people who had done this particular job many times in many places. Within 8 minutes, they had loaded 14 cartons of commercial audio equipment, the same Harman units that had come in 3 weeks ago, logged as received in full, but which I had personally counted as showing a 9-unit shortfall in the physical inventory 2 days later. Kevin checked something on his phone. He reached into his jacket and produced a thick envelope which he handed to the driver with a brief, quiet exchange I couldn't hear from my position. The driver tucked it into his shirt without looking inside. Then Kevin said, just loud enough to carry in the empty warehouse, "Same time next month, tell him the count was clean." The truck moved forward and out, still without headlights. The bay door ground back down. Kevin stood alone in the bay for 30 seconds, checking his phone, then walked back through the side door. The lights went with him. I stood in the dark between the shelving units for another 10 minutes, not moving, making sure. My heart was hammering against my ribs hard enough that I could feel it in my throat, but my hands, when I opened my notebook and uncapped my pen by the glow of the small flashlight I'd brought in my jacket pocket, were perfectly steady. I wrote down everything: bay door operation method, time of arrival and departure, partial plate number, estimated carton count, product description, the envelope, the phrase, "Tell him the count was clean." I underlined that last part twice. Kevin Brooks made $42,000 a year managing this warehouse. The watch on his wrist cost more than 3 months of that salary. And now I knew with the certainty of someone who had spent 30 years in freight and knew exactly what clean books looked like and exactly what tampered ones felt like, precisely where the difference was coming from. It was an ordinary Thursday morning until it wasn't. I was at the inventory station running a physical test on a new pallet of medical monitoring equipment when I heard the side door open and saw a man in a dark suit walk onto the warehouse floor. He moved with the deliberate confidence of someone who knew where he was going, mid-30s. Athletic build, a leather briefcase in his left hand. He was scanning the floor, the way lawyers scan rooms, taking inventory of everything at once. He was heading toward the stairs that led up to Daniel's office. He passed within 15 feet of my station, and then he stopped. He turned his head slowly, the way you turn when something pulls at the edge of your attention and you can't quite identify what. His eyes found me, moved down to my hands, stopped at my right hand resting on the pallet edge, the scar catching the fluorescent light, the way it always did. His briefcase hit the floor, not dropped, released, like his fingers had simply forgotten to hold on. His face went the particular white of someone who has just seen something that rewrites a memory they've carried for 20 years. His chest rose and fell once hard, like a man surfacing from deep water. His right hand came up and pressed flat against his sternum, and I could see from where I stood that the hand was shaking. "Hey," I said carefully. "You all right?" He didn't answer. He picked up his briefcase, turned without a word, and walked quickly back toward the stairs, not running, but close. 12 minutes later, Ashley's voice came over the floor intercom. "Mr. Harrison, Mr. Whitmore would like to see you upstairs. Please come up when you have a moment." I took off my work gloves, folded them over the pallet edge, and went. Daniel was standing when I came in. Marcus sat in the chair across from the desk, his briefcase on the floor beside him, his forearms on his knees, leaning forward like a man trying to keep himself from moving too fast. He looked up when I entered, and I watched him look at my right hand again, confirming something he already knew. Daniel closed the door behind me. "Walter," he said, "please sit down." I sat, The two of them exchanged a look, father and son, communicating in the shorthand of people who have been through hard things together, and then Daniel pulled a chair close and sat facing me directly. 22 years ago, he said, my son Marcus was 10 years old. He was at Griffith Park on a Saturday afternoon. Some older boys cornered him near the East Trail, 4 of them all bigger than him. Daniel's voice was steady, but his jaw was tight. When Marcus finally got home that evening, he had a cut above his eye and his shirt was torn. But he was alive, and he wasn't badly hurt because a man had stepped in. Daniel paused. A stranger. A man who didn't know Marcus didn't know our family. This man put himself between Marcus and those boys and took the worst of it. He had a deep cut on his right hand from the chain-link fence they pushed him into. Daniel looked at my hand. Marcus said the man wouldn't let him call for help until the boys were completely gone. Then he told Marcus to go home and be safe, and walked away without giving his name. The room felt very still. My heart was beating in a slow, heavy way that I felt in my ears. Marcus, Daniel said quietly, has never forgotten that man's hand. I turned to look at Marcus. He was watching me with an expression that cracked something open in my chest. Not pity, not gratitude exactly, but something rawer than either. His eyes were bright and his jaw was working silently, the muscles jumping along the line of it, like he was holding back something that wanted very badly to come out. That was the day I decided to become a lawyer, Marcus said. His voice was rough at the edges like sandpaper on bare wood. Because I wanted to be the kind of person who steps in, who doesn't walk past when something is wrong. He stopped, pressed his lips together hard. I've been looking for you since I was old enough to know how to look. My throat closed. I remembered that afternoon, though I hadn't known then what it would become, or who the boy was, or that the man watching from across the park was the boy's father running toward us from the parking lot. I remembered the fence and the pain and the particular fierce calm that comes over you when you've decided that something is going to happen over your objection, or it is not going to happen at all. I remembered thinking the boy had his father's eyes. You didn't need to find me, I said finally. My voice came out steadier than I expected. You didn't owe me anything. Marcus shook his head sharply and his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles standing out along his neck. You have no idea, he said, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. How many times I've thought about that afternoon. How many times I've wondered what happened to you. He stopped again, cleared his throat hard. And now you're here, in my father's warehouse, in an orange vest. Despite everything, despite the tightness in my chest and the burn at the back of my eyes, the corner of my mouth moved. It's a good vest, I said. Marcus let out a breath that was half a laugh and half something else, entirely the sound a person makes when they've been holding something for a very long time and finally at last have somewhere to put it down. Daniel leaned forward and looked at me with the kind of directness that belongs to men who have learned to say important things without dressing them up. Whatever you're dealing with in that warehouse, he said, you don't have to handle it alone anymore. Do you understand me, Walter? I looked at this man who had given me a job when 11 others had closed their doors. At his son, who had chosen his entire life's work because of an afternoon I'd nearly forgotten. My eyes burned and I pressed my back teeth together and breathed through it. I understand, I said. I walked back down to the warehouse floor with a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness exactly. Something quieter. The particular fragile feeling that maybe things happen for a reason after all. Something is about to shift in this story, and the person who makes it possible is someone you haven't fully met yet. Before I take you there, type "still here" in the comments so I know you're with me. Every single comment means the world to the Revenge Dad channel. A quick note: portions of this story include fictional elements woven in for entertainment and educational purposes. If that's not something you'd like to continue with, this is a good moment to step away, no hard feelings. I watched Elena Vasquez for 4 days before I approached her. Not because I was suspicious of her, because I was trying to understand her. There's a difference, and in my experience, it's an important one. She arrived every morning at 7:45, always 5 minutes before the accounting office officially opened, always with a coffee cup from the same place, a small Vietnamese bakery 2 blocks from the harbor that made the kind of strong condensed coffee that serious people drink when they need to get through serious days. She worked through her lunch break more often than not, eating at her desk, with her eyes on her monitor, the food going cold beside her keyboard. She was meticulous, competent, and visibly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. I recognize that particular exhaustion. It's what happens when you carry something heavy for a long time and can't put it down and can't ask for help. On the fourth day, I waited until 6:15 when the main floor had emptied out and caught her in the hallway outside the accounting office as she was locking up. "Ms. Vasquez," I said, "do you have 5 minutes?" She turned and looked at me the way people look when they've been dreading a conversation they knew was coming. Her eyes were dark and sharp, and she held her bag against her side like a shield. "I know who you are," she said. "The new inventory guy." She paused. "I've seen you looking at things." "I've been looking at numbers," I said. "The numbers don't add up." Something moved across her face. Not surprise, just the particular flicker of someone watching a door they've been leaning against finally start to open. Her grip on her bag tightened until her knuckles went pale. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. I reached into my jacket and took out my notebook. I opened it to the third page and held it out. She looked at it for a long moment without touching it, her jaw tight, her breathing deliberately even. Then she took it. She read in silence, her eyes moving quickly down the columns. Her hand began to tremble just slightly, just at the fingertips, the way a person shakes when they're trying very hard not to. When she reached the bottom of the page, she closed the notebook carefully and handed it back to me. "Come inside," she said. She unlocked the office door, and we sat across from each other at the small conference table with the overhead lights dimmed. She set her bag on the table and pressed both palms flat against the surface like she needed something solid to push against. "I've known for 2 years," she said. Her voice was quiet and controlled, but underneath it something was fraying. "Every discrepancy you found I found first. I have my own records." She stopped. "I can't use them." "Why?" I asked. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she opened her bag and took out her phone, scrolled to something and turned the screen toward me. A video. Grainy, taken from a ceiling angle, a break room or a supply room somewhere, a woman accepting a small envelope from a man in a vendor jacket. The woman was Elena, 3 years younger, her hair down. The exchange lasted 4 seconds. "My husband was dying," she said. Her voice didn't break, but it cost her something to keep it level. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We were drowning in bills. A vendor rep offered to help, said it was just a gift, nothing expected in return. I didn't know it violated our vendor relations policy. I didn't know he'd filmed it." She took the phone back. "Kevin showed me that video 6 months later. He said if I ever reported anything I saw, he'd send it to Daniel and to the State Board of Accountancy." She pressed her lips together until they went white. "I'd lose my license, my job, everything I rebuilt after my husband died." The room felt very heavy. I thought about what it would take to watch something systematically wrong happen every day for 2 years and say nothing. To carry that and still come in at 7:45 every morning and eat cold lunch at your desk because the work still needed to be done, right? Even if you couldn't fix the parts that were broken. "He didn't trap you, Elena," I said. "He just made you believe you were already guilty. There's a difference." She looked at me sharply. Her chin was trembling now, and she pressed her thumb hard against the corner of her jaw to stop it. "That's a very fine distinction," she said, "when you're the one holding the video." "It's not a fine distinction," I said. "It's the only one that matters. You accepted a gift once under impossible circumstances from someone who deliberately set you up. Kevin Brooks has been systematically stealing from this company for 2 years. Those are not the same thing." She turned away and looked at the dark window for a long moment. Her reflection looked back at her tired upright, holding itself together by main force. "What are you going to do?" she asked finally. "What James Kowalski started," I said. "Except this time, we finish it." She turned back to me. Her eyes were wet, but not spilling, held in place by the same stubborn discipline that had kept her at that desk for 2 years when a lesser person would have walked away. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. And in my experience, when someone stops running, they're already deciding to turn around. The second time I stayed for the gray truck, I was better prepared. I'd spent the previous afternoon studying the warehouse layout from memory, mapping the blind spots, the places where the overhead lights didn't quite reach, where the shelving units created natural channels of shadow that ran perpendicular to the loading bays. There was a section along the north wall between units 7 and 8 where a man could stand completely invisible to anyone working near Bay 4, provided he didn't move and didn't use a light. I positioned myself there at midnight, settled in, and waited. The harbor outside made its usual sounds, distant machinery, the low groan of vessels shifting against their moorings, a foghorn somewhere out past the breakwater. Inside the warehouse, the refrigeration units hummed steadily along the east wall. Every few minutes, the building itself would tick and settle in the night, cold, small, metallic sounds that I'd stopped noticing by the second hour. At 1:17, the bay door began to move. Same manual operation as before, slow, muffled the door rising in careful increments rather than the clean, mechanical sweep of a normal opening. A vehicle reversed into the space without headlights, and the cab light was off as well, which told me the driver had disabled it deliberately. A modification that takes less than 30 seconds, but requires the specific knowledge that you're going to need it. I noted that in the margin of my notebook. Cab light disabled, premeditated. Kevin came through the side door in dark clothing, moving with that focused, stripped-down efficiency I'd seen before. None of the warehouse floor swagger, none of the performance. This version of Kevin was entirely functional. He had a flashlight, low-powered, pointed at the floor, and his phone in his other hand with the screen brightness turned all the way down. 2 men climbed from the truck. A third stayed in the cab. 3 people. Last time there had been 2. The operation was scaling. I pressed myself flat against the shelving unit at my back and controlled my breathing slow through the nose, let the chest expand fully before releasing. The kind of breathing you do when stillness is not optional. My left knee ached from the concrete and the cold, a deep grinding complaint that radiated up into my hip, and I locked the knee and ignored it and kept my eyes on the bay. They worked fast. Faster than last time. A practiced rhythm of movement that suggested they'd run this particular operation enough times that the choreography had become automatic. Cartons of consumer electronics came off a pallet near Bay 3. The same pallet I'd inventoried 4 days ago, logged at 52 units received. I'd counted 50 in the physical noted. A 2-unit discrepancy flagged it in the system as a possible transit loss. Now I watched 14 of those units leave the building in the arms of men who didn't work here. I had my notebook open at hip height, writing without looking down, keeping my eyes on the bay. I'd practiced this writing by feel small block letters, enough information to reconstruct the full picture later. Plate number partial, time, unit count, direction of exit. I couldn't get the full plate from this angle, but I had the first 4 characters clearly, which, combined with the partial from last time, gave me enough for a registration search, if it ever came to that. Kevin was directing the loading. With hand signals, his flashlight pointed at the floor between himself and the men working. He said almost nothing. When he did speak, it was in a low-clipped murmur, a word or 2 at most, the language of people who have learned that silence is a form of evidence management. Then one of the cartons slipped. It didn't fall. The man carrying it caught it against his chest with a grunt, a short, involuntary sound that was louder than anything else that had happened in the past 40 minutes. Kevin's head snapped up. His flashlight swept the warehouse floor in a tight arc, directly toward my position. I stopped breathing. The beam crossed the face of the shelving unit 18 inches to my left, traveled across the floor between us, and continued past. But Kevin didn't lower the light immediately. He held it up and slowly swept it back in the opposite direction, methodical, the way a careful man double-checks something that almost worried him. The beam passed my position again. I was behind the unit's edge by perhaps 6 inches, in the dark clothing, completely still. The light touched the corner of the unit and moved on. Kevin stood motionless for 10 full seconds. My lungs were burning. My left leg had begun to shake from the sustained stillness, a fine, muscular tremor that I couldn't entirely suppress and could only hope was too small to be visible at this distance and in this light. One of the men said very quietly, "Probably the building's settling. Let's finish up." Kevin lowered the flashlight. He looked at the floor for another moment. I could see his jaw working, some internal calculation running, and then he turned back to the loading and said nothing further. I breathed. Slow, controlled. Let the oxygen move through me and did not allow my hands to shake, though everything else wanted to. The truck was loaded and gone by 1:53. Kevin stood alone in the bay for a moment after it left doing something on his phone, and then he walked out through the side door. The warehouse settled back into its nighttime rhythms, the refrigeration hum, the distant harbor, the building ticking quietly in the dark. I stayed where I was for another 8 minutes. Then I sat down on the concrete floor, my back against the shelving unit, and finished my notes by the light of my small flashlight, full account, timestamps, unit descriptions, the 3-person crew, the cab light modification, the 10 seconds of Kevin scanning the dark with his flashlight and finding nothing. I had enough now. Enough that someone would have to take it seriously, regardless of what my file said about me, regardless of what Kevin said about me, regardless of anything. The numbers were real. The dates were real. The partial plate numbers were real. Real things written on real paper in the inside pocket of my jacket where nobody was going to find them unless I chose to show them. I stood up slowly, my knee screaming its objection, and walked back through the dark warehouse toward the exit. The question now was not what I had. The question was who would believe it and whether I'd have enough time to make that matter before Kevin decided I was a problem that needed solving. I got back to the motel at 2:41 in the morning. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled off my boots and set them side by side on the floor, the way I always did. And then I just sat there for a moment with my forearms on my knees and my head down, letting the adrenaline finish draining out of my system. The room smelled like old carpet and the leftover heat from the wall unit. Outside, a truck downshifted on Fletcher Avenue, the engine braking loud in the quiet night. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. 10-digit Southern California area code. I looked at it for 3 full rings before I picked up. Hello? Silence on the other end. Not empty silence, but the silence of someone who has rehearsed what they're going to say and suddenly can't find the first word. I could hear breathing. Careful, deliberate breathing, the kind that comes from trying very hard not to cry before you've even started talking. Walter, the voice was barely above a whisper. It's me. My whole body went still. 31 years of marriage teaches you things that don't go away just because the marriage does. I knew Diane's voice in the dark, the way I knew the sound of my own heartbeat automatically below the level of thought. And right now, that voice was shaking in a way I had never heard it shake before. Not grief, not guilt. Something underneath both of those. Something that sounded like a person who had been holding a very heavy door shut for a very long time and whose arms were finally giving out. Diane, I said, a sharp intake of breath on her end, like she hadn't been certain I'd say her name instead of hanging up. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, she said. I know I don't have the right to call, Her voice fractured on the last word, split clean down the middle, and she stopped, and I could hear her pressing her lips together, trying to pull herself back. Richard doesn't know I'm calling. He checks my phone, my email, everything. I bought this at a CVS on Sepulveda when he was in a meeting. I've been carrying it in my coat pocket for 3 weeks, trying to decide if I had the courage to use it. I pressed my free hand flat against my thigh and kept my voice even. Say what you need to say, Diane. Another fractured breath. Then, he threatened me, Walter. From the very beginning, he said if I ever told anyone at all, that he would make sure the same thing happened to me. Her voice dropped even lower. I was so afraid. I have been afraid every single day for 5 years, and I know that's not an excuse. I know that doesn't give back what you lost. But I need you to know that I knew it was wrong. I knew from the moment they took you away that it was wrong, and I couldn't. She stopped again. A sound escaped her that she clearly hadn't meant to let out, small and broken like something tearing along a seam that had been under pressure for too long. My chest hurt. Not the dull, familiar ache of old damage, but something sharper and more specific. The pain of hearing someone you once loved coming apart at the edges in the dark. I wrote to you, she said. Her voice had gone quieter, almost steady now, like she had moved through the worst of it and come out somewhere flatter on the other side. Every month, I started the night they took you. I wrote everything, what really happened, what Richard did, what I should have done differently. I wrote it all down, because if I didn't write it down, I thought I would lose my mind. I closed my eyes. I couldn't send them, she continued. He monitored the mail, everything. But I kept writing anyway until he found them in 2022 and took them all. I'd made copies by then, hidden them in a place he didn't know about. A pause. 47 letters, Walter. 1 for every month I could still write before he stopped me. The number moved through me like cold water. 47. I did the arithmetic without wanting to, December 2018, when they came for me forward through 47 months of a woman sitting somewhere in that house I'd built with my own hands, writing words she couldn't send to a man she'd watched disappear into a system she hadn't stopped. My eyes were burning. I pressed the back of my wrist hard against my mouth and breathed through it. How many people know you're calling me? I asked finally. No one, she said. Just me. All right. My voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. I'm going to call you back, Diane. Not tonight, but I will. She made a sound that might have been a thank you, or might have been something that didn't have a word yet. Then the line went quiet. I set the phone down on the nightstand. I sat in the dark of that small room, the wall unit humming steadily, the street outside going about its indifferent business. And I looked at nothing for a long time, 47 letters. 1 for every month she could still write. I had lived those 47 months on the other side of a locked door, counting days. I wasn't sure would ever add up to anything. And she had been on this side writing words she couldn't send to a man she couldn't reach. I didn't know yet what that meant. I wasn't sure I was ready to know. But I sat with it in the dark until the numbers stopped feeling like arithmetic and started feeling like something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet that sat in the center of my chest and quietly refused to leave. Thursday was too quiet. That was the first thing I noticed when I came in that morning, the particular unnatural quiet of a man who has decided to stop making noise before he strikes. Kevin was on the floor by 7:30, which was unusual. He was pleasant, which was more unusual still. He nodded at me when I passed the receiving bay, a small collegial nod, the kind that says we're all professionals here and means something else entirely. My stomach tightened. I'd been around enough dangerous men in my life to know that the ones who smiled before they moved were the ones you needed to watch most carefully. Kevin's everyday cruelty was manageable, predictable, almost comfortable in its consistency. This version of him, the one who nodded pleasantly across the warehouse floor at 6:45 in the morning, made the back of my neck go cold. I went to my station and did my work and watched him from the corner of my eye. He didn't come near me all morning. He didn't assign me any difficult tasks. He spoke to Brigham twice briefly with the relaxed air of a man who had nothing pressing on his mind. He checked his phone less than usual, which told me whatever he was coordinating had already been coordinated. At lunch, I went to the break room and ate my sandwich and thought about the 2 notebooks in my inside pocket and whether I'd moved fast enough. I hadn't moved fast enough. I understood that clearly sitting in that break room, with my sandwich going tasteless in my mouth. Kevin had seen something in the past week in my eyes and the way I moved around the inventory station in some calculation he'd run, about the new old man who asked too few questions and wrote too many things in a small notebook, and he had decided that waiting was no longer an option. The question was what he was going to do about it. I found out the next morning. I came in at my usual time, changed into my work gear, and was reaching for my orange vest when I noticed the lock on my locker looked different. Not broken, but the hasp was sitting at a slightly different angle than I always left it. Small detail. The kind of thing most people wouldn't see. I saw it. I didn't open the locker immediately. I took my time pulling on my gloves, adjusting my badge, giving nothing away. Then I opened it. 3 cartons sat on the shelf above my jacket. Consumer electronics sealed in manufacturer packaging, with the Northern Route shipping receiving sticker still attached. I recognized the SKU number on the label, the same product line I'd flagged a discrepancy on 4 days ago. My hands went very still. From somewhere behind me, Kevin's voice rang out across the locker room, loud enough to carry through the open door and into the warehouse floor beyond. "Random locker check, people. Company policy. Let's go." I heard footsteps, multiple sets coordinated, moving toward the locker room, with the practice timing of something rehearsed. I closed my locker door and turned around. Kevin stood in the doorway with 2 security guards flanking him, and behind them I could see the faces of the morning crew gathering in the warehouse, drawn by the noise the way people are always drawn by the possibility of something going wrong for someone else. 20-odd faces, some curious, some uncomfortable, some carefully blank. Brigham stood at the back, his arms crossed, his jaw set in a hard line. He caught my eye for one brief moment, and his expression told me everything he knew what was happening, and he hated it, and there was nothing he could do about it yet. Kevin looked at me with a smile that didn't reach anywhere near his eyes. "Harrison," he said pleasantly, "let's start with yours." He made a production of it, opened my locker with a master key, stepped back, let the security guards reach in. One of them pulled out the first carton and held it up. Then the second. Then the third. Kevin turned to face the gathered crowd with the theatrical timing of a man who had been looking forward to this moment for longer than the past 12 hours. "Well," he said, his voice carrying easily through the warehouse, "looks like we've got ourselves a problem." The words hit the crowd like a stone hitting still water ripples moving outward, whispers starting at the edges, heads turning. I felt 23 pairs of eyes land on me simultaneously, felt the weight of them, the way you feel a change in air pressure. Some of those eyes were surprised, some were wary, a few were already deciding. I knew this moment. I had lived this moment before, in a different city, in a different life, standing in front of people who had already made up their minds before anyone had said a single word. My heart was hammering against my ribs. My hands wanted to shake, and I locked every joint in my fingers and refused to let them. I looked at Kevin, at his satisfied, careful smile, at the watch on his wrist that cost more than 3 months of his salary, and I understood with complete clarity that this was the moment he had been building toward since the day I walked into this warehouse. He thought he had me. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Before I show you what Walter does next, before I reveal what was inside that jacket pocket and how it changes everything in that warehouse, drop a 1 in the comments. If you've been here this whole time, I want to know. This moment is the one the entire story has been building toward. Note, this story carries fictional elements crafted to bring its message to life. If you'd prefer not to continue, you can step away here, but I think you'll want to stay. I pulled out the notebook. Not my notebook, James Kowalski's. The one I'd found in the stuck drawer 3 weeks ago, its blue cover warped at the corner, the last page carrying 4 words pressed hard enough to nearly tear the paper. I held it up so the crowd could see it, and then I set it on top of the locker room bench beside me, open to the first page. Before anyone calls anyone, I said, I think we need to talk about the real inventory problem at this warehouse. Kevin's smile didn't disappear. It changed, tightened at the edges, lost its ease, became the kind of expression a man wears when he's recalculating very quickly and doesn't want anyone to see him do it. That's somebody's old notebook, he said. It doesn't have anything to do with... It has everything to do with it. I reached into my jacket again and pulled out my own notebook, set it beside James's on the bench. 3 weeks of receiving logs, physical inventory counts versus system entries, dates, times, partial plate numbers, unit descriptions, carton counts. I opened to the 3rd page and turned it so the crowd could read the columns. The same gray truck. The same Bay 4. Every 3 to 4 weeks between 1 and 2 in the morning, running without headlights. The whispers in the crowd stopped. The warehouse went very still. Kevin took a step forward, his voice sharpening. This man is a convicted felon trying to cover his own theft with a conspiracy theory. Don't listen to, I can confirm every number in that book. The voice came from the back of the crowd, quiet, steady, costing its owner something significant to produce. People turned. The crowd parted the way crowds part when someone moves through them with purpose. Elena Vasquez walked to the front and stood beside me. Her hands were trembling visibly at her sides, fingers pressed together, knuckles pale, but her chin was up and her eyes were fixed on Kevin with the particular focus of someone who has decided that being afraid is no longer sufficient reason to stay quiet. I'm the head of accounting, she said loudly enough for the whole floor to hear. I have 2 years of financial records showing the same discrepancies Mr. Harrison documented. The outbound figures don't match the inventory. The losses are systematic and they follow a consistent pattern. Her voice wavered on the last word, then steadied. I should have said something sooner. I'm saying it now. Kevin's face went through several expressions in rapid succession, surprise, fury, calculation, and landed on something cold and dangerous. He jabbed a finger toward her, and his hand was shaking not from fear but from the particular fury of a man watching his carefully constructed world come apart seam by seam in front of people he had spent years controlling. You don't know what you're talking about. His voice had lost its polish, cracked at the edges the way expensive things crack when the pressure on them becomes too much. You're going to lose your job for this, Elena, your license, everything. You already took everything, she said, and her voice didn't waver at all this time. You took 2 years of my life. You held a 4-second video over my head and made me watch you steal from this company every single month. You made me complicit in something I wanted no part of. She paused, and when she continued, her voice had dropped to something that carried farther than a shout. You're not getting anything else. The warehouse floor was absolutely silent. Brigham stepped forward from the side of the crowd. He was a big man, and when he moved with intention, people noticed. He didn't say a word. He just crossed the floor and stood on my other side arms, crossed over his chest jaw, set in a line so hard it might have been carved from concrete. The message required no translation. Then Terry Macklin stepped forward. He looked nervous. His hands weren't quite steady, and he kept his eyes away from Kevin, but his feet moved anyway. And sometimes that's the only kind of courage that counts. Then 2 younger men from the receiving bay stepped up beside him, both of them breathing fast, both of them standing there regardless. Kevin looked around the warehouse floor and saw what I saw. The crowd that had gathered to watch him make an example of me had rearranged itself into something he hadn't planned for and couldn't undo. The people he had relied on to stay silent through intimidation, through fear, through the simple human instinct to keep your head down and protect what little you have were no longer staying silent. One by one, they had crossed an invisible line on the warehouse floor, and they were standing on the other side of it. His jaw tightened until the muscles along the side of his neck stood out beneath his skin. His hand went to his phone. The side door opened. Daniel Whitmore came through it at a pace that suggested someone had called him while he was already moving. He stopped in the middle of the floor and took in the scene with the still focused attention of a man who has walked into rooms like this before and knows that the first 60 seconds of observation matter more than anything said afterward. The open lockers, the cartons on the bench, the two notebooks lying open side by side, the assembled crew arranged in a shape that told its own story. Kevin standing alone in the center of it all. Daniel's face went very quiet. He looked at Kevin for a long moment, the kind of look that contains years of professional history of trust extended and apparently misplaced, and then he turned and looked at me. "Is that your documentation?" he asked, nodding at the notebooks on the bench. "Yes," I said. He walked to the bench without another word, picked up my notebook, read the first page slowly, then turned to the second. His expression didn't change. It was the face of a man who has learned to process difficult information in real time without letting it show, but something in his posture shifted in a way I recognized. The shoulders dropped a fraction. The jaw tightened by degrees. The particular physical vocabulary of a person absorbing a truth they had hoped they would not have to absorb. He closed the notebook carefully. He set it back on the bench beside James Kowalski's, and he looked at it for one more moment. Two notebooks from two different men who had seen the same thing and written it down because they didn't know what else to do, and then he straightened and turned to face the room. "Somebody call the Long Beach Police Department," he said. His voice was quiet and absolutely final, the voice of a man who has made up his mind completely and is not going to unmake it under any circumstances. "And get our legal team on the phone, right now." Kevin's hand dropped away from his phone. His arm fell to his side. The Rolex on his wrist caught the fluorescent light one more time, one last flash of everything that watch represented. Everything it had cost and everything it had cost other people. And then his arm was just an arm, hanging there, belonging to a man who had run out of moves. I looked at him across the warehouse floor. I had no dramatic feeling about it. No satisfaction, no anger, no sense of triumph that needed to announce itself. Just the quiet, solid weight of something that had been wrong for a long time beginning at last to be made right. The kind of rightness that doesn't need an audience. The truth written carefully over several weeks in a 50-cent notebook had turned out to be bigger than he was. It almost always does. Kevin Brooks was in a Long Beach Police Department interview room by 10:30 that morning. I know this because Marcus called Daniel at 11, and Daniel told me in the parking lot, while the last of the morning crew were filing back into the warehouse in the stunned, subdued way of people who have witnessed something they're still processing. The police had taken Kevin's phone, his keys, and the Rolex off his wrist before they put him in the car. Someone on the floor had watched them do it, and told Terry, and Terry had told everyone else. And by noon the warehouse had the particular charged atmosphere of a place where something significant has shifted, and nobody is entirely sure yet what the new normal looks like. I went back to work. It was the only thing I knew how to do. By 3 that afternoon, Marcus called us again. Kevin had asked for a lawyer within the first 20 minutes of questioning his right and smart and exactly what anyone with something to protect would do. But by early afternoon, after 3 hours in that room with the kind of documented evidence that doesn't leave much room for creative interpretation, Kevin's lawyer had made contact with the district attorney's office. Kevin wanted to make a deal. In California, a cooperation agreement, what most people call a plea deal, allows a defendant to exchange information about larger criminal activity for reduced charges or a lighter sentence. The DA's office evaluates the value of what's being offered against what they're giving up. In Kevin's case, what he was offering turned out to be considerably more valuable than a warehouse theft case. He gave them Gregory Holt. Gregory Holt, CFO of Northern Route Shipping, 15 years at Daniel's side, the man whose name was on the company's financial statements, and whose signature authorized every major transaction NRS made. Kevin laid it out in specific documented detail. Gregory had approached him 2 years ago with the arrangement, provided the contacts for the truck and the buyers, and received 30% of every load that left through Bay 4 without paperwork. The operation had moved just over $400,000 in stolen merchandise over 22 months. Daniel took the call in his office with the door closed. I was in the hallway when he came out, and I didn't need him to say anything. His face told me everything. The jaw tight, the eyes doing the careful, controlled work of a man who has just learned that someone he trusted for 15 years had been systematically stealing from him and is choosing to feel that fully rather than push it aside. He looked at me for a moment without speaking. Then he said very quietly, "Gregory is being arrested right now." I nodded. There was nothing useful to add. He went back into his office and closed the door again, and I stood in the hallway and thought about what it costs a person to find out that the people closest to them are capable of things they never imagined. I knew something about that particular cost. It didn't get cheaper with familiarity. Marcus arrived at the office at 4. He'd spent the day making calls of his own, not about Kevin or Gregory, but about me, about the 5 years I'd lost and the paperwork that had made it legal. He sat across from me in the small conference room off the main hallway. His jacket off his sleeves rolled up a legal pad covered in notes on the table in front of him.
The conservatorship petition, filed in November of 2018, lists Dr. Arnold Webb as the certifying psychiatrist, he said. Dr. Webb signed the initial evaluation and every subsequent annual review. He paused. Dr. Webb died on March 9th, 2021. The room felt very still.
Some of the annual review documents. Marcus continued, his voice steady and precise the way it gets when he's angry and choosing to channel it into something useful. Bear Dr. Webb's signature on dates after March of 21. One of them is dated 14 months after he died. He looked up from his notes. "Walter, someone forged a dead man's signature to keep you locked up. That's a felony under California Penal Code 470, criminal forgery of a legal document. And it wasn't just done once." He turned the legal pad around so I could see it. 4 names. 4 conservatorship cases. Same forged signature, same law firm, a solo practitioner named Stephen Carr, operating out of a Culver City office that Marcus had already confirmed was real and currently active. "You weren't the only one," Marcus said. His jaw was tight. "Stephen Carr and your son have done this to at least 3 other people, all of them older, all of them with significant assets, all of them isolated from their families during the process." He stopped. "Let that sit for a moment. I've already contacted the California Attorney General's office. They're opening an elder financial abuse investigation under Welfare and Institutions Code, Section 15.6, 10.30. That covers the financial exploitation of anyone 65 or older. The AG has jurisdiction across all 4 cases." My hands were flat on the table in front of me. I looked at them, the scar on my right hand, the calluses from 3 decades of work, the slight tremor in my left thumb that had developed sometime in the past year, and that I'd stopped trying to explain. 4 people, 4 lives taken apart by the same machine using my son's name and a dead doctor's signature. "There's one more thing," Marcus said. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a printed sheet, set it on the table. "Daniel pulled the old personnel files this morning. There was a warehouse inventory specialist terminated 8 months ago. Wrongful termination from the look of it." He slid the sheet across to me. "His name is James Kowalski. I found a current address in Compton. I'd like to call him today with your permission."
I looked at the name on the sheet, the same name on the blue notebook in my jacket pocket, the careful block letters on the masking tape, the 4 words pressed into the last page. "Call him," I said. Marcus nodded and reached for his phone. I watched him dial, watched him wait through 2 rings, watched his expression shift when someone picked up on the other end. "Mr. Kowalski," he said. "My name is Marcus Whitmore. I'm an attorney in Los Angeles. I think you and I have some important things to talk about."
Through the conference room window, I could see the warehouse floor, the orange vests moving between the shelving units, the forklifts making their steady passes, the whole ordinary machinery of honest work continuing exactly as it should. Brigham was at the receiving station checking something on a clipboard. Terry was moving a pallet with focused, unhurried efficiency. The warehouse looked the same as it had yesterday. Everything else was different. The sign above the entrance still said, "Harrison Freight and Logistics."
My name, my company's name. The letters were the same brushed aluminum I'd chosen myself from a sign maker on PCH 22 years ago when we'd outgrown the original office and moved into the building on South Alameda. I stood on the sidewalk and looked at those letters for a moment. Harrison, and felt something cold and specific move through my chest that wasn't quite anger and wasn't quite grief and was maybe something that didn't have a clean name yet.
Marcus put his hand briefly on my shoulder. "Ready?" "Yes," I said. We went in.
The receptionist, a young woman I didn't recognize, which made sense 5 years was long enough to replace an entire staff twice over, told us Mr. Harrison was expecting us and to please go up. Marcus had arranged the meeting through Richard's attorney 3 days prior, framed as a preliminary discussion before formal legal proceedings. Richard's lawyer had tried twice to reschedule. Marcus had declined both times with the polite, immovable patience of someone who knows the other side has no actual leverage.
Richard's office was on the second-floor corner position overlooking the loading dock I'd designed myself. The furniture was different, sleeker, more expensive, the kind of corporate aesthetic that signals money being spent to prove money is being made. The photographs on the walls were different too. No family photos, no company milestones, just abstract prints in expensive frames, chosen, I suspected, by someone paid to make the room look like it belonged to a certain kind of person. Richard stood when we came in. He was in a charcoal suit that fit perfectly, his dark hair swept back, every element of his appearance under precise control. He gestured toward the chairs across from his desk, with the measured hospitality of a man conducting a meeting he had prepared for carefully and intended to control. "Dad," he said. His voice was even. "I'm glad you're doing better."
I sat down. Marcus sat beside me and opened his briefcase without responding to the pleasantry, which was the right instinct. "Everything I did," Richard said, settling back into his chair, "was to protect the company. You weren't well. The business was suffering. Someone had to make decisions." "Whose company?" I said. He paused. A small pause, barely visible, the kind that happens when a prepared answer meets a question it wasn't quite built for. "Our company. The family's—"
"I built that company," I said. "I built it with 30 years of my own work, starting with one leased truck and a folding table in a rented office on Long Beach Boulevard. You didn't protect it, Richard. You used it." Something moved across his face. Not guilt, not remorse. Something more like the flicker of a man recalibrating his approach mid-conversation, deciding which angle to try next. He turned to Marcus. "You've brought a lawyer," he said. "This is a family matter." "It stopped being a family matter," Marcus said without looking up from the documents he was arranging on the desk between them, "when your co-counsel filed forged psychiatric evaluations, signed by a physician who had been deceased for 14 months. That's a criminal matter. Several of them, actually." Richard's jaw tightened by a fraction. His hands resting on the desk didn't move. He was, I realized, genuinely good at this, at presenting a surface that revealed almost nothing. In another life, in a version of him, I'd somehow failed to produce that quality might have been something admirable. "I'd like to address the specific allegations through proper legal channels," he said smoothly. "My attorney has advised—" "Richard," I said his name the way you say something when you're done waiting for the conversation to become what it needs to be. He stopped. Looked at me. I looked back at him, this man I had coached through Little League and driven to SAT prep and helped move into his first apartment in Koreatown the Saturday afternoon. We'd carried his mattress up 3 flights because the elevator was broken and he'd complained the whole way up, and we'd laughed about it at the top. I looked at him and I tried to find some remainder of that afternoon in his face and found nothing I recognized. "You didn't have to do any of this," I said. "I would have given you everything eventually. The company, the assets, all of it. You just had to wait." The room was very quiet. Outside the window, a forklift moved across the loading dock with a pallet of boxes going about its business with the indifferent efficiency of machinery. Richard looked at me for a long moment. His expression didn't break, but something behind it, some small buried thing, shifted almost imperceptibly and then was gone, smoothed back under the surface before it could become anything readable. "I think," he said quietly, "we should continue this conversation through our respective counsel." I stood up. I looked around the office one more time. The abstract prints, the expensive furniture, the window overlooking the loading dock I'd designed. Then I looked at the sign visible through that window, the brushed aluminum letters catching the morning light. Harrison. "Keep the sign," I said. "You're going to need a lawyer to afford it." I walked out. Marcus followed, closing the door quietly behind him. In the elevator going down, he allowed himself a small, tight smile. "All that last line," he said. "Too much?" I asked. "No," he said. "Exactly enough." In the parking lot, I stood beside Marcus's car and breathed the outside air, diesel and salt from the harbor 2 miles west, the particular smell of working Los Angeles on a Tuesday morning. My hands were steady. My chest ached with something old and specific that I suspected wasn't going to resolve itself quickly or cleanly, and that was all right. Some things shouldn't resolve quickly. Richard was going to need a very good lawyer. What Marcus had already filed with the AG's office, combined with what the DA had from Kevin's cooperation agreement, combined with the forged documents and the 4 parallel conservatorship cases, Richard's attorney was going to earn every dollar of whatever he was charging. I got in the car. Marcus said the formal charges would likely come within the next few weeks. I nodded and looked out the window as we pulled onto Alameda, the Harrison Freight Building, shrinking in the side mirror until it was just another building on a street full of buildings, and then it was gone. Marcus had told me only that Diane wanted to meet.
He hadn't told me she'd be there when I arrived. I walked into the conference room at his office on Wilshire, and she was already seated at the far end of the table, pale blue cardigan, gray hair pulled back, both hands wrapped around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking from. She looked up when I came in, and the expression on her face was one I'd never seen on her before in 31 years of marriage. Not guilt exactly, something beyond guilt. The face of a person who has been carrying something so heavy for so long that the weight of it has become indistinguishable from who they are, and who is now sitting in a room where they've decided finally to set it down.
I sat across from her. Marcus closed the door and took the chair at the end of the table between us, quiet and still, as a man who understands that some rooms need to breathe before they can hold a conversation. Diane looked at me for a long moment, her lips pressed together. Her chin trembled once, and she pressed it flat with visible effort, and it trembled again anyway. "I don't know how to start," she said. "Start wherever you need to," I said. She nodded slowly, the way people nod when they're not agreeing with something, but giving themselves permission to continue. She set the coffee cup down and opened her bag, a brown leather bag. I recognized the one I'd bought her for our 28th anniversary at a shop in Santa Barbara, and reached inside.
What she placed on the table was a bundle of envelopes. Not a small bundle, a thick stack held together by 2 rubber bands, the envelopes worn at the edges, and slightly yellowed, the kind of yellow that takes years to develop. Some were sealed, some had been opened and refolded, and the flaps had given up trying to lie flat. The handwriting on the front of each one was Diane's, her particular cursive, the D in my name, with the long, looping tail she'd had since I first saw her handwriting on a grocery list 33 years ago.
She pushed the stack across the table toward me. 47, she said. Her voice cracked clean down the middle on the word, and she stopped and swallowed hard. One for every month I could still write before he found them. I made copies first. I don't know why, I just knew I needed to. She pressed 2 fingers against the corner of her mouth. He took the originals in the fall of 22. I've had the copies in a fireproof box at my sister's house in Glendale ever since. I looked at the stack of envelopes. I didn't touch them yet.
Every month, she said, I wrote down everything. What really happened at the party. What Richard told me before and what he told me after. What I signed and why I signed it and what he said would happen if I didn't. Her voice was shaking badly now, but she kept going, kept pushing the words out with the dogged, painful determination of someone who has rehearsed this moment many times and knows that stopping will make it impossible to start again. I wrote about what I should have done differently. I wrote about missing you. I wrote about the house and the eucalyptus tree and the way you always made coffee on Saturday mornings too strong because you thought weak coffee was an insult to the beans. Something in my chest gave way, not loudly, not dramatically. The way a wall gives way when the structural thing holding it has finally quietly failed. Not a collapse, just a settling slow and complete and irrevocable. I picked up the stack of envelopes. They were heavier than I expected. 47 months of words written in the dark of a house where someone else had taken up all the space pressed into envelopes that had never gone anywhere. They sat in my hands with a weight that had nothing to do with paper. I pulled the rubber bands off carefully, picked up the envelope on top, postmarked in my head as December 2018. The month they came for me, though. Of course, there was no postmark because it had never been sent. I opened it, unfolded the single sheet inside. Walter, it began, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll ever be able to send it, but I need to write it down because if I don't write it down, I think I'll lose the thread of what's real and what isn't, and I'm already not sure I can trust my own mind anymore. I read 3 more lines, then I stopped.
I set the letter down on the table in front of me, very carefully, the way you set down something fragile. I pressed both hands flat on the table on either side of it. I looked at the window across the room, the Los Angeles skyline, gray and bright in the May morning, indifferent and enormous. And then without deciding to, without warning, without any of the slow buildup that usually precedes these things, my eyes filled and spilled over.
I didn't make a sound. I didn't move my hands from the table. I just sat there while it happened, while 31 years and 5 lost ones and 47 unsent letters moved through me like weather, like something that had been waiting offshore for a long time and had finally made landfall. Diane made a sound across the table, short and broken, wrenched out of her, and her hand came across the table and covered mine. Her fingers were cold, and she was shaking, and she didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything, and Marcus sat very still at the end of the table and looked at his legal pad and gave us the room.
After a while, I don't know how long, I lifted my free hand and pressed it briefly over hers. Then I straightened up. I blinked twice. I picked up the letter, refolded it carefully, and placed it back in its envelope. "Add these to the record," I said to Marcus. My voice came out level. I was grateful for that.
Marcus nodded and reached into his briefcase. "Mrs. Harrison," he said quietly, "when you're ready, I have some documents I'd like you to review. Your testimony about the party in November of 2018, combined with these letters, constitutes significant evidence of coercion under California law. What you sign today will matter." Diane looked at the documents Marcus set before her. Her hand was still trembling as she picked up the pen. She held it over the signature line for a moment, just a moment, and then she signed her name, clear and steady, the long, looping D of her cursive. She set the pen down and pressed her hands together in her lap and looked at me across the table. "I'm sorry, Walter," she said. "I know that doesn't fix anything." "No," I said, "it doesn't." She nodded, accepting this the way people accept true things that hurt. "But it's a beginning," I said. I wore the suit Marcus helped me buy on a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks before the hearing. Not expensive, a navy blue off the rack from a department store on 7th Street, altered by a tailor in Koreatown who charged $60 and did the work in 48 hours. But it fit well, and it was mine, bought with money I'd earned doing honest work. And when I looked at myself in the mirror that Thursday morning in July, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. A man who looked like himself. The Los Angeles Superior Court building on Hill Street was exactly as I remembered it, from the one time I'd been inside. Before high ceilings, marble floors, the particular institutional quiet of a place where serious things happen at a measured pace, regardless of how urgently anyone involved needs them to happen faster. Marcus walked beside me through security, his briefcase in hand, his expression composed and focused. "How are you doing?" he asked. "Ask me in 3 hours," I said. He almost smiled. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined during all the months of thinking about it. Wooden benches, fluorescent overhead, lights a long oak bench at the front where Judge Patricia Okafor sat, reviewing documents with the unhurried attention of a woman who had presided over difficult things for a long time and knew that rushing them didn't make them easier. She was in her late 60s, silver-haired, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and an expression of careful professional neutrality that I suspected concealed a great deal of precise opinion. Kevin and Gregory were handled first. They'd both entered guilty pleas 3 weeks prior. Kevin under his cooperation agreement, Gregory under the weight of Kevin's testimony and the financial records Marcus and the AG's office had assembled. The sentencing parameters had already been negotiated between their respective attorneys and the DA. Judge Okafor reviewed the agreements, asked several specific questions that told me she had read everything carefully, and pronounced the sentences without theater. Kevin, 4 years in California state prison, with possibility of parole after 2.5. Gregory, 6 years, no parole consideration before 4. Kevin was let out first, and then the side door opened. James Kowalski walked in. He was thinner than I'd imagined from his handwriting, lean in the way people get lean when a hard year has taken something from them that the year after hasn't yet put back. He wore a gray suit that didn't quite fit at the shoulders, and he walked with the careful posture of a man who has decided that this room deserves his best effort, regardless of how much that effort costs him. He caught my eye across the courtroom and gave me a single nod, small, direct, the nod of one working man to another. My throat tightened. Marcus had prepared a victim impact statement on James's behalf, detailing what Kevin's deliberate false accusation had cost him: the job, the apartment, the marriage that had ended 18 months after his termination, when the financial pressure became too much. The wrongful termination case Marcus had filed simultaneously on James's behalf was a separate matter to be heard at a later date. But James had asked to speak here today in this room, and Marcus had made it happen. James stood at the podium and spoke for 6 minutes in a voice that was steady, except at one point briefly when he described telling his daughter on the phone that he had lost his job and not being able to explain why without crying. He didn't editorialize, he didn't ask for sympathy. He just described with plain and specific accuracy what it had looked like when one man's deliberate cruelty had moved through his life like a demolition crew. When James finished and returned to his seat, Kevin was staring at the floor. He didn't look up. Richard and Stephen Carr were next. The preliminary hearing for their charges, elder financial abuse, criminal forgery, fraud, conspiracy, took 40 minutes. Stephen Carr had been Richard's personal attorney and the architect behind the forged documents, the man who had prepared every conservator,
ship filing, obtained the fraudulent signatures, and built the legal framework that had kept me locked away. He and Richard had operated as partners from the beginning. Marcus presented the documentary, evidenced the forged signatures, the conservatorship filings, the financial records showing the systematic transfer of Walter Harrison's assets, the parallel cases of 3 other victims whose situations the AG's office had now formally incorporated into the investigation.
Richard's attorney objected to several items. Judge Okafor sustained 2 of them and overruled the rest with the brisk efficiency of someone who had already formed a view and was giving the process its due diligence rather than being genuinely uncertain. Diane sat 3 rows behind me throughout. I didn't look back at her, but I was aware of her presence the way you're aware of weather, not looking at it directly, but feeling it in the air. Richard did not look at me once during the entire proceeding. Not when Marcus spoke, not when Judge Okafor asked him directly whether he understood the charges being brought. He looked at the table in front of him, at his attorney, at his own hands. Everywhere except at the man he'd put in a locked room for 5 years.
Judge Okafor denied bail. She cited flight risk and the scope of the alleged conspiracy across multiple victims in multiple counties. Richard would remain in custody pending trial. His attorney's objection was noted and overruled in the same sentence. Then Judge Okafor removed her reading glasses, set them on the bench in front of her, and looked at me directly. "Mr. Harrison," she said, "this court has received evidence today of systematic fraud upon the court, forged medical documentation, falsified signatures, and deliberate misrepresentation in a conservatorship proceeding. I am issuing an emergency stay order, halting all conservatorship actions effective immediately, and referring this matter to the probate division for expedited termination review." She looked at Marcus over her reading glasses. "How quickly can you have the probate petition before a judge?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "It was filed this morning, Your Honor. Judge Reyes has already agreed to hear it Friday." Judge Okafor nodded, once her expression settling into something final and certain. "Then by Friday, Mr. Harrison, your rights will be formally and fully restored. What was done to you should not have been done. This court intends to make that right."
She signed the order. Her pen made a clean, final sound against the paper. "Mr. Harrison." Her voice had shifted, not unprofessional, but something in it had changed, some careful neutrality, setting down its tools for just a moment. "This court owes you an apology that no paper can ever fully repay. What was done to you with forged documents and false testimony in a proceeding that this court presided over, that is a failure of this system that I take seriously and personally. I hope what happens in this room today is at least a beginning of something better for you."
The room was very quiet. I pressed my hands flat on the table in front of me and breathed slowly and looked at the signed order on the bench and thought about a morning in February when I had stood on a sidewalk outside a facility in Los Angeles with $612 in a canvas bag and no clear idea of what came next. "Thank you, Your Honor," I said. Outside afterward, James Kowalski found me in the hallway. He'd loosened his tie and was holding his jacket over his arm, looking marginally more like himself than he had inside. We stood together for a moment without needing to fill it with anything. "What are you going to do next?" he asked finally. "I have a job," I said. "You might want to look for one. I might know someone who's hiring." He looked at me for a moment. Then he laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of him, the kind that happens when something genuinely catches you off guard in the best possible way. It was the first time I'd seen him laugh, and it looked good on him. We shook hands in the hallway of the Los Angeles Superior Court on a Thursday in July, the city going about its enormous, indifferent business all around us, and I thought about 50-cent notebooks and gray trucks and eucalyptus trees and 47 letters that had finally arrived. The apartment on Linden Avenue was small and faced east, which meant the morning light came in early and hit the kitchen counter first, and then moved across the floor in a slow, clean line that reached the bedroom door by 7:15. I'd noticed this on the first morning and every morning since. It was the kind of thing you notice when you've spent years in rooms where the windows were fixed and the light didn't move the way light is supposed to move freely according to no schedule but the sun's. I made coffee, strong the way I always had. I stood at the counter and drank the first cup, looking out at the street below a quiet residential block in Long Beach, 3 blocks from the water where the morning air smelled like salt and someone's jasmine climbing a fence 2 buildings down. A woman walked a large dog past the entrance. A kid on a bicycle cut across the intersection without stopping the way kids on bicycles always have and always will. Ordinary, completely unremarkably ordinary. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, put on the navy suit, and drove to work. The parking lot had a reserved space near the entrance marked with a small sign, Chief Operating Officer. Someone had put it there earlier in the week. I'd driven past it twice before accepting that it was mine and pulling in. I pulled in. Daniel was waiting at the entrance. He was in his usual dark slacks and rolled sleeves, a cup of coffee in one hand, and he looked at me the way he had looked at me the morning he had led me down that hallway 8 months ago, not as an employer looking at an employee, but as something harder to name than that. "Good morning, Walter," he said. Not Mr. Harrison. Walter. First time he'd said it that way, easy and natural, like it had always been there waiting for the right moment. "Good morning," I said. We shook hands in the morning sun outside the building where I'd first walked in with a canvas bag and $600, and no particular reason to believe the day would go any differently from the 17 days before it. Marcus was inside, leaning against the reception desk, talking to Ashley, who was laughing at something he'd said. He straightened when he saw me and walked over and put his hand out. "James Kowalski starts at Pacific Rim Logistics next Monday," he said. "I thought you'd want to know." I did want to know. Something in my chest settled at the information the way a last piece settles into place, not loudly, just finally. "Good," I said. "That's good." Elena was at the top of the stairs. She was holding something, a small package wrapped simply no bow. She came down and held it out when I reached the landing, and her expression was the one I'd come to understand was her version of warmth. Direct, unsentimental, genuine, in exact proportion to its restraint. "For the new office," she said. I unwrapped it. A notebook. Slim hardcover, the deep blue-green of the ocean on a clear day. Not a dollar store notebook, the kind that was built to last, with thick cream-colored pages and a ribbon marker sewn into the binding. I turned it over in my hands. "Thank you, Elena," I said. She nodded once, accepting the thanks without deflecting it, which I'd learned was her way, and went back up the stairs to the accounting office. The COO's office was on the second-floor corner position, with a window that looked out over the yard, and beyond the fence, the cranes of the port moving against the August sky. The desk was large and clean. Someone had put a plant on the windowsill, small green thriving, and a cup of pens on the corner of the desk, and nothing else. A blank room waiting to become a working one. I stood at the window for a moment and looked out at the yard. 3 trucks were backed into the loading bays. The forklift was making its first pass of the morning. Brigham was at the receiving station with a clipboard checking something, his orange vest catching the early light. 2 of the younger guys were moving a pallet together, one guiding one, pushing, talking to each other about something that made them both grin. Ordinary work, honest work, the kind that connects one day to the next in a chain of small, necessary, decent things. I sat down at the desk. On the surface in front of me, I placed 2 objects, the blue-green notebook Elena had given me, and James Kowalski's old notebook, the one with the warped cover and the masking tape, and the 4 words pressed into the last page. I'd carried James's notebook for 5 months. It had sat in my inside pocket against my chest, through everything that had followed from the moment I'd pulled it out of that stuck drawer. I thought it deserved to rest now. I opened Elena's notebook to the first page, cream-colored paper, smooth and blank, holding no history yet, and ready to hold whatever came next. I picked up a pen. Below me, the forklift hummed steadily. A truck engine turned over in the yard. The cranes moved against the blue August sky with the slow, purposeful grace of things built to carry weight over long distances. I wrote the date at the top of the page, August 2024. Then I wrote 2 more words beneath it. Day 1. I've kept a lot of notebooks in my life. Some of them were records of what was being taken from me. Some were maps I drew in the dark, trying to find my way back to something solid. The one sitting closed on the corner of my desk had saved a man's life, or at least helped give it back to him, and that was more than most notebooks ever get to do. This one, the blue-green one with the cream pages and the ribbon marker, I didn't know yet what it would become, what I'd fill it with, what it would look like a year from now, or 5 or 10. But I was here, in a room with a window that faced the harbor, at a desk that was mine, with a pen in my right hand, the scarred one, the one that had started all of this without knowing it, 22 years ago in a park on the east side of the city on a Saturday afternoon when a man made a choice that he never expected to matter as much as it did. For the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to finding out what came next. I started writing. I used to think losing everything meant the end of a man. I was wrong. What defined me wasn't what I lost. It was what I chose to do the morning after I had nothing left. I got up. I put on a clean shirt. I went looking for honest work. This family story taught me one thing above all else. The people who smile longest at your table are not always the ones who stand beside you when it counts. Don't learn that the way I did. Pay attention to who shows up when you are at your lowest.
I'm not a man who speaks about faith often, but I believe God places something worth finding on the other side of every closed door. I found Daniel. I found Marcus. I found myself again.
This family betrayal nearly broke me. Nearly. It made me more certain of who I am than 30 years of success ever did. If you are carrying something heavy that someone else put on your shoulders, a 50-cent notebook, and the decision to keep going can be enough, that is my honest opinion, and I stand by it. This has been my family story, one version of family betrayal that I hope you never live yourself. If something here stayed with you, drop a comment below. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if this channel has earned a place in your day, subscribe. There are more stories coming worth your time. Thank you for staying until the very end. The stories on this channel are built with crafted elements designed to illuminate something honest about the human experience. If that's not for you, no judgment. Choose what serves you best.